Susan here again, hoping you're ready to hear more interesting things about the weed industry. Have you ever wondered what people are like in the weed industry? What kind of people do you think hoppers, dealers, and distributors are? Are they NPR listeners and Democrats? Are they addicts and drug fiends? Maybe they're like Tony Soprano and his crew. Now, I might get a little bit of disagreement about this in the comments below because others have different experiences than mine, but that's okay, and I'd love to hear about those too. But I'm only telling you about my dealings with Utah, the Emerald Triangle, and many other outlying places that we went to broker and pick up. We often couriered and picked up 3 to 2 times a month over a 3 to 5 year period. That makes for a lot of places and people that we met. That's quite a breadth of experience, so I consider myself somewhat knowledgeable. For the most part, all the farmers, trimmers, brokers, distributors, couriers, dealers, and the hoppers that I knew were really just a bunch of marshmallows. Really, they were just nice, normal people. They were pretty mellow because, quite frankly, lots of them smoked weed and it kind of chilled them out. To tell you the truth, there isn't even necessarily a stereotype because most cannabis crews actually reflect their client's culture and they blend in. If the clientele is white, middle to upper class on the east side of Salt Lake, then the crew sort of reflects that. If the clientele is from East Oakland culture, then that crew will most likely be the same. So all these people are not the same, but they're the same as the people they sell to. Does that make sense? However, most weed people have a type of stereotype that goes across the board for all clienteles. They are sort of a liberal, soulful kind of person, and they have that kind of outlook on life. As a general rule, with plenty of exceptions, and I'm probably going to hear about them in the comments below, but as a general rule, people in the weed industry are very different from meth and heroin dealers. Those are completely different drugs and completely different energies. Meth and heroin dealers tend to be a little more raw and edgy, bad boy Oz kind of a thing. They seem to be less afraid of violence. Although plenty of weed people will carry guns for protection, nobody in our crew ever did, at least that this mama bear knew of. Everyone in our crew knew, we're very conscious, you don't mix guns and drugs, even marijuana. That's just a surefire way to wreck your life. A lot of harder drug dealers do carry weapons. When I was in the halfway house and in the camp, I'm sure that I was around a lot of meth and heroin dealers. I just didn't know it because everybody was kind of calmed down there and there's not a whole lot of room for individuality and no one's carrying guns or selling and people don't really talk about what they're up to. So I probably knew a lot of them, I just didn't really know it. The only one that I was very conscious of was the girl that I was in the halfway house who had this crazy, jealous meth dealing boyfriend that was just totally off the rails. One day she showed me some pictures and videos on her illegal cell phone, and he had taken pictures of thousands of dollars of cash and a bunch of guns spread out all over the bed. And I'm like, this is against the law for me to even be looking at this crap. Stop showing me your phone, girlfriend. You're gonna get me in trouble. Besides, you're not my girlfriend. Then, when this crazy boyfriend would get higher than the clouds or when he was plummeting down, he'd beat her up or threaten to kill her or himself. We could only get so lucky. I mean, It was just a complete shit show. But, you know, that's the only real active meth dealer that I ever knew of. So it's not like I'm an expert on the stereotype of meth or heroin dealers or anything. Although I never met weed people who seemed dangerous or thuggy or like murderers or gang-like people, hardcore criminal type. And I met a lot of them, but very few weed people do meth or heroin, and the majority of them definitely don't deal in those drugs either. At least none of the ones that I knew anyway. I did know some dealers who might sell weed to coke or meth dealers, but they sure didn't buy in bulk from them, and there didn't seem to be really a whole lot of reciprocity. Um, a lot of people will do coke recreationally and buy little stuff like that, but like when we're talking industry and business and trading and doing that, it's not really very common. The problem is it's just really hard to be on drugs like meth and heroin and stay on top of business. There's just way too much money at stake. We had a bunch of little capitalist hoppers majoring in business at the U in our downline. This was a business, and our people had to keep their heads on straight. When someone is out of control, they make everybody else at risk. There's very little tolerance for chaotic people in the industry. One wrong move could bring the whole chain of dominoes down. So we stayed away from druggy chaos. Even if an in buyer is somebody who is at the end of the line, they only buy a little bit for themselves. They never sell it to their friends or anybody else. They're just buying it for themselves. But even if a small buyer like an in buyer seemed a little bit too erratic or undependable, we just backed down on selling to them. Most of our crew and all the ancillary people were just, salt of the earth, college kids, some professionals, working class and middle age, young and old, and everything in between. And here's a really interesting note. The youngins don't seem to have a corner on the market in the industry, in the business part of the industry. I mean, after all, people my age smoked weed all the time in high school. There's still a lot of older farmers up in NorCal, up in the Emerald Triangle, who served in Vietnam and then came to California to start weed farms. So there's a lot of it. It kind of surprised me. There's really a lot of middle-aged and older people in the industry too. It might surprise you or not, but some of our dealers were really super nice Mormon kids and returned missionaries. Trey met his first dealer at church, and 90% of our crew came from Mormon pioneer heritage. Many connections in this state come from knowing other Latter-day Saints. The Mormon Church is not only a religion, but it's also an integral part of the social context here, especially with the youth and within the weed industry. When we talk about stereotypes of people in the industry, they were Utah was getting ready to put it up to the vote for medicinal weed last November. So they had all kinds of surveys and, coming and going. And they surveyed a lot of Utah medical doctors. And those guys are all very conservative, and most of them are active Latter-day Saints. About 70% of them wanted to replace opioids with cannabis, and they were for legalizing weed for medicinal purposes. A high number of hoppers. Do you know what a hopper is? A hopper is a person that delivers your weed to you. It's like if you order a couple of packages for your friends and yourself, whatever amount you order, or just for yourself. A hopper is the person who brings it to you. It's like the name sounds. They hop around. we had girls and boy hoppers, both of them. And the hoppers have a proclivity for working in the service industries, such as restaurant servers, bartenders, and hotel receptionists. Most hoppers didn't work full-time being hoppers, so they had those kinds of jobs. And of course, The stereotypes of the nightlife people, such as the DJs, the bouncers, and the club owners, did a pretty heavy amount of slinging themselves, and they weren't necessarily what we would call hoppers because people would come to them to get it. In the triangle, the Emerald Triangle, when we talk about the stereotypes of the population that live up there, the farm people, I would say probably 90 to 85% of the farm population is male until harvest season. And that's when the coastal mountain towns explode and are inundated with trimmers. Lots and lots of girls. Some trimmers are guys, but the majority of them tend to be girls. Yay! It was a long, hot summer for farm workers having to hang around with other stinky feral boys. Most of the farm owners and the managers especially welcomed the huge influx of the female trimmers for harvest season, mostly because the girls were able to sit down for hours every day together as they chatted amongst themselves, and they were able to get a lot of trimming done. But it's a lot of hours. It's long, long hours. And so for the boys, it was harder for the boys to sit still. Boys like to be more active and moving, and trimming was harder on the boys. So the farmers and the managers really enjoy the girls because they kind of stay put and stay focused and get stuff done. After we would bring out the money and the boys would broker, then the boys would need to bag the weed so we could take the load home. Sometimes our boys would bag it, Trey or Colin and whoever was around on the farm. It just depended. Sometimes the boys who sold us the weed would help us bag it. It usually took a couple of hours or more. And during that time, their most favorite thing, most of the boys, wherever we would go, they loved to listen to NPR. They would also listen to reggae music and sometimes rap. Nothing too hard or head bangy, but they mostly loved NPR because they loved to have deep, meaningful, and intense conversations about the NPR programs, especially at night when they were relaxing and smoking. And I'm sure one day when these boys grow up and decide to become voting citizens, they're probably going to be registered Democrats. The Mormon dealers, not so much. They'll probably still vote Republican. Go figure. It kind of makes you wonder if any of you who think you don't know any dealers actually do know people in the industry. Even if you go to church and you don't smoke weed and you're a teetotaler, I bet that you know somebody too. You probably know at least one dealer, and most of you probably know at least 10 career people. Almost everybody does. And these people blend into the population, so it's not like you could say, oh, there goes a dealer. Oh, that guy's a hopper. Oh, this guy is a distributor, or that woman is a courier. You can never do that because everyone's so discreet. But you probably know a lot more people in the industry than you think you do. It might be your grandkid or your cousin, and you don't even know it. I mean, all of our crew, our hoppers and our dealers, did have grandparents. But it's not like when you ask your grandkid, hey, buddy babes, how was your day today, you little whippersnapper? It's not like your grandson is going to answer, man, it's a jungle out there on those streets right now, Granny. Some jerk owes me $1,000 and he's late on his freaking payments. Hey, that reminds me. Does Gramps still have any extra baseball bats down there in the basement along with his card collection? It might be your attorney who's a dealer, and you still don't know it. Just a couple of years ago, there was a local lawyer employed by the Salt Lake City Police Department. His kids were running a grow operation down in the basement. He claimed that he didn't know anything about it. Oh, come now. Anybody who's ever grown indoor weed knows that that guy knew exactly what was going on in that house just by the smell or the electric bill. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's drug personality analysis and stereotypes. Remember, I love to hear your reactions, your thoughts, and even your own experiences and opinions about the subject matters that we've discussed today. Leave your comments down below. Feel free to banter back and forth, and I would love to hear about all the strange and wonderful people that you've dealt with in the industry. And together, I'm sure that we can figure out the problems of the Western world. And if you like this episode, be sure to press the like button and the subscribe button if you want to stay on top of any of the new episodes coming out. Until next week's episode, stay out of trouble. And if somebody tries to show you any bad pictures or videos of meth dealers doing stuff, just tell them, no, I can't look at that, it's against the law. And whatever you do, don't do anything I would do. See you later. Bye-bye.